Hello and welcome to the Comic Cave. I'm Ramsey, aka Captain Away, and today I'm looking at the 2007 to 2008 series Marvel Zombies 2: Zomberific Boogaloo. Okay, that subtitle doesn't make sense and isn't actually part of the title, but you knew that. Following the success of the first Marvel Zombies, it would of course only be a matter of time before the series returned. If anything, it's surprising Marvel managed to wait an entire year before releasing more titles. The second book would be done by the same team as the first, with writer Robert Kirkman, artist Sean Phillips, colorist June Chung, and cover artist Arthur Saidam all returning to the title for this sequel. But can I say, I feel it's pretty messed up that Saidam gets his name on the cover, but Chung doesn't. I mean, I know I spent like a full minute of my last video talking about how awesome the covers for the series are, but even still, he did the equivalent of about 5 pages of work. Okay, maybe more like 11 pages given all the alternate covers he did for reprints, but still, that's like half of one issue. Chung colored every single issue from beginning to end. Her colors really give this comic that creepy presence, but still that's not good enough for her name to get on the cover? For reals? Some of you might think it's strange that there even is a second book. After all, the first book ended pretty conclusively. The remaining zombies on Earth left to spend an eternity traveling the stars and devouring other planets. And what few human survivors there were on Earth were left to try and build a life for themselves in the ruins of their old world. What was left for there to say? Well, I don't know what to tell ya, other than that as long as there were still zombies around, there would be an insatiable hunger. So let's sink our teeth into this continuing story and take this away. The comic opens 40 years into the future, which, for those of you keeping track, should be about 45 years after the majority of the events in the previous series, given it had a 5-year jump at the end of that series. We start out in deep space with our title characters, or eponymous characters. That's a big word that means the same thing. You're welcome. We can see that in the intervening years, there have been a few changes. Iron Man and Spider-Man got some new legs, Luke Cage and Wolverine got some new arms, and we've had a few new cosmic additions to the zombie party to show they've been completing side quests along the way, including the Shi'ar warrior Gladiator, Phoenix, who is probably here primarily for the hilarious irony of the Rise Again Phoenix being a zombie, as well as Firelord missing his lower jaw for some reason. And also that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, seeing as Firelord got his powers from being Galactus's herald, which he did after Silver Surfer's tenure in the same role, so that should have never come to pass in this universe, but oh well. And also the Mad Titan himself, Thanos. Though Thanos isn't here for very long, since Hulk gets angry and simply crushes his head. He was a zombie at this point, so, you know, it was easier, all rotted and stuff. After 45 years of gorging themselves galaxy-wide, it seems the zombies have created themselves a little problem. They've eaten everything. Every morsel of every living thing everywhere on every planet. Is there anything else I can say every with? But Giant Man's zombie brain somehow manages to remember that once upon a time the Fantastic Four had built a trans-dimensional device, and believing it might be possible to fix the device, giving them access to an endless multiverse of munchies, they decide to return home. To Earth! Perfect excuse for a smash cut to our human heroes, who have rebuilt a home in the ruins of New York that they are calling New Wakanda. Real talk though, I read this comic when it was initially coming out, and in all that time from then until I started rereading these comics for these reviews, I actually thought that New Wakanda was in Wakanda. But I think this story can only make sense if this is taking place in New York. Because we kick off with T'Challa's grandson, Kashamba, finding the severed head of Hawkeye just hanging out in a ditch, feeling lonely. Left there, I guess, since we saw Magneto sever it from his body in the last series. You may recall I called T'Challa's son Kashamba in the previous video, and that's because that's what they called him. See? I have the pictures to prove it. But I guess Kirkman decided to repurpose the name for the grandson in this video, and now Panther's son and Kashamba's father will be said to be named T'Chana. No idea why this change was made, but it was, so just roll with me on it. Anyway, this Hawkeye head is much different from the bloodthirsty Wasp head we watched Black Panther walking around with in the last series. He even promises to be good and not to try to eat his rescuer. He just doesn't want to be alone anymore. Which proves to Wasp, at least, if no one else, that her theory must be correct. That simply foregoing feasting for long enough causes the hunger to fade and the zombified person to return to relative normality. This is important because the people of New Wakanda apparently elected Black Panther as their obvious leader, and he has apparently spent the past 40 years being exactly that, as their king. And I guess that meant he had to have them build this giant golden panther building. So, you know, time and resources obviously well spent. And maybe that is why the children of the Acolytes have become discontent with Panther's leadership, and led by the son of Fabian Cortez, a guy named Malcolm, they're set to overthrow their king and take over the future of humanity. T'Challa's not really willing to do anything about their discontent though, because he knows he'll be dead soon enough anyway, given his old age, and with such a small gene pool, they really need everyone around them to give them a chance to survive. Forge and Wasp and that scientist guy Reynolds all kind of disagree, and their solution is to turn Black Panther into a zombie since they are convinced that, like I said earlier, he'll get over the hunger if he gives himself the chance to. Panther's not really into that solution though. The new Acolytes don't feel as cordial to their king as he does to them though, so in the middle of the night they send an assassin to kill the king while he's sleeping, and that assassin succeeds. To a degree. Panther manages to kill his attacker, but with his guts hanging out like that, he ain't surviving. So Wasp provides the quick solution of turning Panther, despite whatever his earlier wishes were, and the taste of flesh reignites her hunger. Panther won't stand for any zombie feast on his wife though, so to temporarily handle their hunger, they devour T'Challa's would-be assassin. They then lock themselves away in a sealed vault so that they can take their time to let their hunger fade away naturally so that they can return to not being a threat. But during that time that they're locked away, Malcolm uses their absence to complete his coup, and announces plans to execute all zombies. So Forge and Reynolds, pretty much the only two people still loyal to Panther, decide to break Panther and Wasp out and sneak them, and Hawkeye in his new robot body, out of town in the middle of the night to protect them. But Malcolm Cortez is no fool and easily predicted this happening, so he stops them and wakes everyone up so they can see what has become of their king. And that would probably be bad if it wasn't worse that the main Marvel zombies chose this specific moment to return home. After all that time in deep space without any food though, Zombie Spider-Man began to notice that his hunger had faded and that he regretted not being able to be a superhero anymore. I mean, they did get to stop and feast on Ego, the no longer living planet, the hopefully not undead zombie planet, but even still, enough time had gone by for Spidey to start feeling more normal again like Wasp and Hawkeye. Most of the other zombies are tired of listening to Spidey by this point though, since he behaved like an impatient child for most of their trip through space, and they decided to just try and kill him. But Spidey's words got through to Luke Cage, and he joined Spidey in trying to protect the still living. And luckily Forge and Reynolds had prepared for a return of the living dead and created an impenetrable force field to block the monsters out. Only they accidentally cut Luke Cage in half and catch Gladiator inside the field. So Forge shows us that he's made use of the intervening 40 years to salvage abandoned superhero technology, and shows up in Iron Man's original armor to help fight. This gives Cage and Spidey the chance to use their cosmic power beams to disintegrate Gladiator's head, saving the day for at least the time being. The zombies left inside the force field are brought to a lab where Cage can get a new set of robot legs, Spider-Man can get wrapped up back together after nearly being ripped in two by Gladiator, and Wasp could get fixed up and make out with Reynolds, since he's fallen in love with her over the years despite her zombieism. Not sure how that kiss is really supposed to work though. I mean, she doesn't have lips. It's gotta feel like someone just rubbing your face with their bare teeth. That does not sound like a good thing. Yeah, Panther and Cage, that's 100% the correct response. They also have with them a sedated Bruce Banner, as Hulk was the only one who had the chance to feast, and, you know, he collapsed afterwards, as he usually does. Knowing they'll have to face the still hungry zombies outside eventually, Panther tries to come up with a plan, and to help him, Forge and Reynolds reveal their big secret. It's Colonel America! But also not. It's the body of Black Panther's son, T'Challa, who we have learned died at some point earlier, with some of Colonel America's somehow still functioning brain inside of his head. Which means he's not all there and really not able to do much more than spout some action figure lines when you pull his drawstring.
Feel in, soldiers, we're at war! The fate of the world rests on our shoulders! Avengers, assemble!
Actually, now that I think about it, this isn't so different from regular Captain America. T'Challa is pretty understandably pissed at Forge and Reynolds, but there isn't much time to deal with that because they got zombies at the gates. The zombies themselves decided it was a waste of time to bother trying to get through the force field and headed off to the Baxter building to find Reed Richards' interdimensional teleporter, only to find it isn't there at all. Realizing it must be at New Wakanda, they return to the survivor town only to be met by Black Panther and an unexpected offer. Panther, realizing what these good-for-nothings are actually here for, offers to turn over the teleporter if the zombies simply promise not to eat anyone in the colony. They agree, I'm sure they mean it, but it turns out it's a twap! Because the hero zombies just wanted to get outside the force field with the bad zombies so they could fight them? That was your plan, BP? That's the worst plan I've ever heard. Especially with Iron Man managing to get inside the force field. Well, half of him anyway, which is enough for zombies. This last part actually was part of the plan. They apparently wanted to let at least one or maybe two of the zombies in because inside New Wakanda, a combined force of warriors is ready and waiting for zombie Iron Man. But the entire plan ends up going to hell when Bruce wakes up and attacks Reynolds, shattering the force field controls and letting all the zombies in. Only these delays end up proving to have made all the difference, because by the time they get to where they can feast on the frightened populace, Giant Man discovers he actually doesn't want to. The hunger, just as Spidey suggested, is gone. He convinces the others to stop and realize that the hunger is gone for them as well. Well, all the others except for Hulk, who Kool-Aid Mans his way in here at the most inconvenient time. It's like the opposite of the Kool-Aid Man, really. The other zombies try and stop him from eating anyone, and Hulk defends his right to food, killing off Phoenix, and then Hawkeye, and then Fire-Lord, and Iron Man in the process. He's finally stopped by Reynolds, who offers himself as a fresh meal since he believes Wasp died fighting Giant Man a few minutes earlier. It will turn out that she didn't, but Hulk doesn't give Reynolds the chance to learn this and devours the old man immediately. Momentarily full again, Hulk returns to being Banner and begs to be killed. The others quickly use their cosmic powers to meet that request. The dead heroes are buried in honor, and while sure, that's a cool shot, I guess, I'm not sure they really deserve to be memorialized in this way after everything that they did, but okay. Sometime later, Giant Man also reveals that Forge and Reynolds did indeed have the dimensional transporter, but even after 40 years, they were never able to get it to work. But Malcolm, remember that asshat, he reveals that it's because he kept sabotaging the machine. He didn't want it to work because he never grew up in a civilization and didn't want to find out what that was like. He likes how things are now. He also reveals that he killed Black Panther's son, but that's kind of an aside, and I guess not really that important to the story. It just goes to prove that he's a total asshole, but we kinda knew that already. So he uses the device to teleport all the gathered zombies to parts unknown, leaving Malcolm to celebrate his supremacy and leaving us to teleport to the breakdown. I'm a bit conflicted on just how to feel about this series. On the one hand, like I said in the beginning, it's definitely an unnecessary sequel. The first series left things pretty conclusive, and I don't know why they felt we needed more. Just to cash in? Yeah, probably. Also, I feel like this series especially highlights the weakness of Phillips' art. A lot of it just seemed rushed or like he just didn't commit to the line art. Like, he maybe relies a bit too much on everything being covered in shadow, and if it's not, then his weakness is really exposed. Maybe he should just not be his own inker. On the other hand, I do still kinda like this comic. Everything enjoyable about the first one is still on full display here. It's a little less shocking to experience this time, and it doesn't stand on its own like the first one did, but that doesn't really make it less enjoyable, just less unique. There is one new thing that this story adds, and that's the mythology that the hunger fades over time. It's honestly a pretty cool addition because it's something that adds to the story without actually contradicting anything previously established. As we learned from the beginning that the zombie apocalypse ran over the entire Earth in only 2 or 3 days, so the zombies never gave the hunger a chance to fade before this. It's actually almost like the emphasis on how quickly the hunger consumes the minds of the infected was a hint that this twist was coming, even though there's no way it was originally intended. So all that considered, I'll give this series a recommendation level of medium. If you read and enjoyed the first series, then I think it's definitely worth checking out this series. But this is certainly not the comic to start your Marvel Zombies journey with, and there's absolutely no reason to read this one if you haven't read the first one. There's nothing this series does that one didn't do better. The collected edition gets 1. Colonel America action figure, complete with karate chop action and voice box.
Fall in, soldiers, we're at war!
That's a pretty good thing. Mostly. Except for, that whole part where we had to use T'Challa's dead son in order to make him. But corporate greed comes first. This collection thankfully restores the individual issue covers to where they belong, dividing up the issues collected, and contains another mini gallery of the original covers being parodied. It also has very brief interviews with both Kirkman and Phillips. And I love how they both say that pretty much their favorite zombie movie is Shaun of the Dead, which really is the only correct answer to that question. Thanks everybody for watching. That's Marvel Zombies number 2 done and dusted. I'm still not sure if I'm going to try and do volumes 3, 4, and 5 as individual videos or all at once yet. Let me know what you prefer in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video and or are just hungry for more, then be sure to click that like and subscribe to help your captain out. And to help yourself out, because that way you can be sure to be here next time, and I hope to see you then, right here, in the Comic Cave.